start this. So, what led you? Is there other genres of EDM electronic music you create?
Yeah, so I mess with a few different things. So tropical house music. I also am working on some tribal house, which is something I'm interested in. But I have some music coming out a little bit later, probably early next year, that actually has a bit of psytrance in it, which
Oh,
kind of
okay.
shows how I was influenced from these festivals that I go to. So there will be so I'm not making psytrance, but you'll hear these elements come into my music. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm.
That's awesome. And do you have a background education of music, or have you learned music all your life on your own?
Yeah, so I learnt piano when I was really young. I didn't really stick to it so much until probably I've come back to it a bit more now. But I'm mostly self-taught. So I taught myself guitar when I was about 12, and then I went on to play drums in a few bands. So I've kind of just tried out different instruments as I've gone along. Yeah, and eventually
Hmm.
producing. Mm.
Awesome. And is do you play instruments as well? And also, do you have any other influences from other bands too?
Um, you broke up a little bit there, but I think I got some of the question. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But I incorporate some real instruments into my music. I'm starting to do that more so with percussion. As far as bands that influence me, I think one of the EDM acts that got me into producing was Alice in Wonderland, an Australian producer, and she's really
Right.
taken off now. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And does
yeah,
anyone in your family play music as well?
yeah. So my brother plays guitar, and my mum plays flute. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So do you guys create music together, or have you guys ever done that?
I haven't played music with my mum before, but I would like to. I think that would be fun. But I have jammed with my brother a few times. Yeah, he really actually got me interested in learning music at the start. You know, he was in grunge bands and things like that during the '90s, so that kind of inspired me to pick up guitar at the time.
Oh, awesome. That's great that you have that influence with family and get that from them.
Yeah, and they're really
Yeah.
supportive
Yeah.
too. You know, I was just talking to my mum before about this interview, and she's like, "Oh, you've always done music, and it's changed a lot through time. From death metal to house music. So there's been a big shift in what I do, but yeah, they're all very supportive of it. Mm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that for me too. I'm like my background, so I have like a little bit more of the rock and really like into that too. So I know how that is.
Yeah,
um,
didn't you tour? Didn't you tour with bands and things for a while? Isn't that something that you
yeah,
did?
a little bit. Yeah, a
Yeah,
little bit. I was the roadie for Skillet, and then with did some internship with some like indie pop band. So I had my experience with a little bit with that, but I realized that for touring is not really um, much of my thing. Like traveling a lot, have to have a lot
fair
of
enough.
breaks. Right,
Yeah, it can be quite uncomfortable, I imagine, constantly moving about, new towns and cities. Yeah.
right. Have to get used to that. Um, so what led you to choose Cavedweller as your artist name, and is there a meaning behind it, significance?
Yeah, so I teach philosophy at a university. That's my job as a teacher. And so the name Cave Dweller is a reference to the wise people and ascetics that used to go out and meditate in caves,
Oh,
especially in Eastern cultures and things like that. So it has a sort of a mystical significance. And it's
yeah.
also a reference to Plato's allegory of the cave, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so in the just to summarize, the allegory pretty much describes these people that live in a cave and see these shadows that are, um, you know, put on the wall from the fire, and that's all they ever see is these shadowy images, and they think that's what reality is. And then eventually somebody leaves the cave, finds a way out of the cave, and sees the world in all of its color and beauty. And it's sort of a metaphor for, the more you learn, the more amazing your experience can be of the world. So yeah. Anyway, that's how I came to the name Cavedweller.
Oh, that's really cool. It's like it's like almost like you're hibernating, but you're like meditating to find yourself, but also your songs, your inspiration, for music and your story.
Yeah,
So cool.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I think the name Cavedweller is gonna make more sense with the music I'm bringing out in the future. It's a little bit more mystical, has a bit more of a world music influence. Um, so I think the name is gonna make a little bit more sense as I go along and present new music. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. And you can always tweak the name and change it later if you want to add something else to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
No,
Um,
that's okay.
yeah. So, what is your motto in life, and what do
Mm.
you live by motto in life?
Um. So Mum, I was thinking about this recently, and I guess freedom is really important to me. So my motto would be to live free and let others be free. I think it has a lot of significance in different aspects of life. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, with what's going on around the world and in our own societies as well. So I think freedom is really important. So living free, which actually I think is somewhat similar to, I think, the motto in Texas, funny enough. I'll have to look
Oh,
at that. But they have a similar sort of saying. You'd be able probably be able to tell me more about that.
oh,
Live free. I think it's live free or die or something like that. Have you heard of this? It's one of your
oh,
states has this as their slogan. Anyway,
I think
that's not
maybe.
my motto. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I know every state here in the U.S. has their own, like belief in different things. I know for
Yeah.
California is like very very chill. Like we're like the beach towns and like we're pretty chill and but yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, being free it's important to kind of as a musician, to pursue what you can towards life, and become all that you can be, right? And express
Absolutely.
your story, your melodies to the world, and hope that it will bring that freedom to others. I mean, as we are also as musicians experiencing that, we're bringing that to others too. So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and I think I really like your take on that as well. Freedom through music. Yourself from going to festivals and things, how much music can impact people's personal sense of freedom. Can be really powerful. So, yeah, I think we both understand what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Whom are your greatest inspirations?
Creative inspirations. Yeah, so with electronic music, it's definitely Alice in Wonderland got me into producing. I think she got a lot of people into producing, actually, at least here in Australia. So she's a big
Hmm.
influence on and inspiration to my music and um, kind of how she went about creating herself and really turning what is really quite a strange sound into something that is now really mainstream. I think that's pretty impressive. So Alice in Wonderland got me into it. But I like other acts as well. Um, sort of Sophie Tucker, those sort of
Yeah.
upbeat house acts that incorporate those sort of world music aspects. I find that really funky and I think I model my
Yeah.
music on that a little bit, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's yeah. Sophie Tucker. Their music are just are very very special and unique and kind of like exuberating their personality. Like even their from their fashion, from their branding to like their music. It's like
It's incredible. Yeah. Um, it's amazing too that their music has such diversity. You know, it's so diverse. They do sort of deep house tracks, but sometimes they'll also do these really, you know, sort of aggressive, sort of Afro house tracks. And you're right, it's the complete package. They've branded themselves really well. So I think any sort of upcoming producer is probably going to benefit by looking at acts like that to see how they've, you know, essentially how they've made it and how they present themselves. It's really quite amazing.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Is there a favorite EDM track um, that that you have?
Yeah. So again, Alice in Wonderland, it would be the song called Run. It was the first real EDM track that I ever paid attention to. Um, so before that, I'd heard EDM tracks, but I kind of dismissed it. Whereas when I heard this song called Run, it kind of um, it really took me by surprise by how emotional EDM could be, and how I guess personal it was. You know, before that I thought EDM was mostly techno and sort of these genres that are fun, but they're a little bit cold. Whereas when I heard that song, that kind of changed my understanding of EDM and kind of gave me an idea of where the genre as a whole was probably going. So yeah. Anyway, long story short, it's Run by Alice in Wonderland. Mm.
Awesome. Yeah. Um, it's interesting with all these trends of electronic music and so much like wide range of like genres that you can put in electronic music versus right like rock or classic rock like or other types of music that there's just so much more to EDM, and especially finding the trends of what new artists are kind of tweaking and creating with like synthesizers with different programs and just kind of like paving the way like even with like what Morton and David Guetta had kind of created with like future rave in their own
Oh, so
genres.
so cool. Yeah,
That's
I love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
the new genre of future wave, right? Like
Oh, it's epic. I For one of the New Year's Eves, you know, we were in lockdown here in Australia, and for New Year's Eve, I put on his future rave show that he did on top of some hotel in Dubai, and
oh
it was
yeah,
one of the most epic things I've ever seen. Like, you know, it was just like this is the new sound, and it was just intense, and yeah, it's awesome. David Guetta and Morton are killing it right now. Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah, it's awesome. And for like any like for your future prospect, like, is there any like top EDM artists or artists that you would like to co-write in the future someday? What would that be?
Yeah. So um, there's this group in Australia called Haiku Hands. Have you ever heard of them? They're kind of
No.
yeah, yeah. So Haiku Hands are a sort of an indie dance act, and I've kind of I'm obsessed with them. So if I ever got the chance to work with this group, I would absolutely, yeah, I would do that. So one day, who knows?
Yeah,
That'd be cool. Yeah.
yeah. It's always a step at a time, right? Like it's not a like a sprint, right? We want to get to like there. You're gonna get to the top, but it just takes it working at it like day in and day out, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Um, you know, you know, working in the industry in different ways, it is a lot of work. Um, I'm not sure if some people understand, you know, like how much work goes into all of this. So yeah, every little bit counts, um, which is why I appreciate you having me on here for the interview. It's all those little bits, they form a bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Brian and Frick, and thanks for everyone for joining. If you guys have questions, you guys feel free to ask at the end. Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely. And really awesome to, have you here. And I hope to, have other artists in the coming months when I can on here.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a community, everyone, just let you know, to encourage, inspire like electronic music and musicians to pursue what they love to do and pursue their dreams, and hoping that this will be, a platform and space in the community where we can all, encourage each other and, not give up on our dreams and continue, doing what we love, because life is a gift, and, so it's important to.
Oh, absolutely. And I look forward to seeing what other artists you have on here, because at least for me, as it sounds like it is for you as well, the community aspect, that's really important to me, and I think that's really where the good things happen, is by building this community together. And so by you having these interviews, you're really contributing to that community. So thank you.
Yeah, I, I'm I'm happy to help. I'm so glad. Yeah, so happy to. So yeah, so any how do you see yourself in 5 years from now as an artist? Like, do you plan on traveling and touring and doing local shows, or um, any prospects for the future?
Yeah, so I guess my 5-year plan is to be playing um, specifically the counterculture festivals here in Australia. I used the word doof before, but essentially they're like psychedelic dance festivals that we have out in the bush, and they're really popular here. That's where you see some really interesting acts, and I think my music is probably becoming more suited to those events. So within 5 years, that's what I want to be doing. I want to be touring those types of shows here and perhaps elsewhere, because I know in America you have these types of shows as well. Um, like, yeah, and you've got Burning Man and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah. Burning Man is definitely like whole entire like ball game right there. It's,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how I would go. It goes for like 7 days, right? It goes forever. Um,
yeah,
have you
it
been?
was.
Have you been to Burning Man?
No, haven't. To be honest, it's funny. Ever since I transitioned, well, into dancing and music and all that, I, with shows and everything, and also with pandemic, it's been hard kind of going to a really like a big show.
Yeah,
All of them is so high in cost, and um, like EDC and Insomniac. A lot of the shows are kind of like 400, about 400, 300 to $500 per person, US dollars per person.
whoa, yeah, yeah, okay.
So
Wow.
I mean, you could do a monthly plan, but you can save kind of like kind of have to save for it. So but
Yeah,
I hope
wow.
to kind of check out more so like EDC, maybe Insomnia for sure. But I definitely would aim for like Tomorrowland would be really cool to
Oh,
go to.
tomorrow would
That,
be so cool. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. That's great. So like with psychedelic group, like I know that one of the group was like Mini Vinci. Have you heard of their music?
Who, sorry?
Vinny Vinci.
Yes, yeah. I actually saw him uh, at one of these festivals in Australia. Yeah.
Oh,
So he's probably the biggest name in that genre
yeah,
at the moment. But so that's the main, that's the headline acts that play at these shows. But usually they'll have these little side stages where people that do my sort of music um, can do their thing, which is a little bit more chill, I guess. Because Vinny Vici
yeah,
stuff's pretty intense. Yeah,
yeah.
it's cool though,
Very, very
but
cool.
very intense. Yeah.
very fast paced. So
Yeah, amazing production though on his stuff, on their stuff. It's crazy.
yeah. So I think I asked that. And what are your favorite festivals? I guess ones you
Mm.
want to perform and play at specifically. Do you have ones?
Yeah, I have one festival that's like the holy grail for me that I'd like to play at, and that's Rainbow Serpent Festival. It's
Okay.
Australia's biggest counterculture festival, and yeah, it goes for about 5 days, and I think they have like 6 stages. It's huge. It's a massive thing, um, but
Wow.
it's the most colourful, um, most exciting festival I think I've probably been to, and I think if I was to get a spot there one day, that would be a dream come true. That'd be really cool. So that's a goal for the next 5 years is to try and get a spot at Rainbow
Yeah.
Serpent. Mm,
Awesome. That'll be fun.
yeah.
uh, yeah. And so, is there challenges and adversities you had to overcome to to get to where you are as an artist today? And can you share one thing you had to overcome?
Yeah, okay. So for anyone who's tried producing or just making music in general, it can be really disheartening when, you spend endless days and nights making music. A lot of it at the start won't be any good unless you're lucky, and that can be really disheartening for a lot of new producers. It was for me. But my advice would be to stick with it, um, and explore, you know, so especially at the start, explore these different sounds because, the more tools that you have in your toolkit, the more interesting your sound will be in the end. So, um, yeah, so that would be my advice to that. And I think it's also important to remember that music is subjective. There's actually no such thing as bad music. Like some people literally listen to like white noise and things like that. They love it, right? There's really no such thing as good music or bad music. There's only preference. So if you get shut down, if you get rejected by radio stations or whatnot, I still recommend that you stick to the sound that you want to do because if you do it long enough, other people are going to start vibing with it. This is just what I've noticed. So, yeah, stick with it. Keep trying.
Yeah,
Mm,
that's a really great advice right there to any artist. It's consistency, right? And
mm.
sticking to your like what your talent, your sound, and your melody in production, and definitely what you're saying. Definitely, like even as a creative artist, like who has a lot of different, maybe a lot of different favorite type of melody, and is trying to navigate to find the right sound. And it's important to find that that you love, right, and not to let go of it and not to back down, right, from that. And
I
so
think
yeah,
so. Yeah, like, there can be a lot of pressure to conform to make the music that's really popular now or whatever the trend is. And that's okay if you really like that type of music. But I think it can be a bit of a trap because, you know, um, it's really not speaking of like who you are as a musician and what your sound is. So while it can't hurt to replicate at the start, I would say risk it. Kind of experiment and yeah, just be true to yourself.
yeah, yeah, definitely. um it's kind of like with Casablanca too. When I discovered about them, their music, I was like, wow, this is really cool, like melodic. And I was thinking, is it melodic house? I was like, it sounds like techno, a bit of a mix of the techno. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So um, to be able to discover that they created kind of like a new sound that I haven't heard yet. And so
Yeah, and and yeah, if you can do that, if you can find some sort of niche, even if you're doing a genre that's really trendy right now, if you start to incorporate other little interesting bits, that's what's going to separate you from everyone else. So yeah, so acts like that, experiment, and as well as an act you recently advertised. I can't say the name properly, but it's like Opio, something like that. You were
Oh, okay.
advertising them recently on your page. They're really fascinating as well. Mm,
Right.
yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So, what makes for like an advice? I guess what is any piece of advice you would give to upcoming, EM artists or DJs?
Um. Yeah. So I'm trying not to be contradictory here, but in order to like find your sound, you have to try all different sounds. So even if, so I guess kind of what I was saying before, even if you want to make house music or techno or whatever, it it is really beneficial to experiment with other styles as well, whether or not that's like, dubstep or melodic house or whatever it is, even just a little bit, even if you just spend like half a day making a little 1 minute track that's not in your style, you're going to learn things that you can eventually incorporate into the music that you want to do. So focus on your main stuff, but also experiment a lot is what I would say, and
Yeah,
watch lots of YouTube. YouTube's the place, yeah, for instructions.
definitely. It's interesting too. It's like with me coming up these like posts and creating like sharing more about different genres, of different artists. It kind of teaches me to kind of like expand a different variety of melodies that I've never explored before to put in my tracks or create like a
Yeah,
track for a post. I was like, wow, never think that to create like a type of dubstep, kind of tune, and try to create kind of a trance type of tune. It's yeah, it's kind of inspirational to kind of push yourself, right, to see your potential and how you can build on your skills.
yeah, absolutely. And you might surprise yourself. You might find a whole new sound like you're saying, and that'll open up this whole world of things you can explore. You know, so even with the little bits of your music that I've heard, I can hear that there's a very specific sound that you've got there, but I can tell that there are these sort of diverse influences in your music as well, and really that's good. That's what we need as producers, is to not be too judgmental and try these other genres. At least give them a listen and see what they have to
Yeah,
offer.
yeah, that's really great for sure. Um, so tell us more about your release. So I know that you're releasing your music, your single called Dawn next week.
Mm.
So is there a story behind that release and that song?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about Dawn. It's not your typical dance track. Um, so sort of so the idea behind Dawn is it's of peace. I think you broke up there a little bit. Anyway, yeah. So you know, coming out of lockdowns, coming out of COVID, Dawn for me was like this. You know, what do I want to do? What do I want to do in life? What's really important? How do I find my peace? In a world that's full of tribulation, right? So Dawn, I think, conveys this awakening into um, this new state of being. It's hard to explain, but when you hear it, it's like it's a journey. So it takes the listener um, kind of from the early morning into the day. So there's these metaphors going on, about awakening and all that sort of thing. So I think it's pretty cool. Um, as I said, not your typical dance track. You're going to hear things in there that I've never included in music before, different types of instruments and things and influences. So I hope people can vibe with it as much as I can, as I do.
That's really great. I look forward to hearing them.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool. Like like especially now, like with us coming out of the pandemic, and it's really important to have that hope, right? To kind of like gravitate towards that and have that in your lives, and just the awakening, right? The dawn, and yeah, that's a great like message. Well, I would say message behind the song, and yeah, we all need a bit of that right now.
absolutely. And I'm glad what I said made sense. But yeah, you get it. So I think it's something that, at least the story behind it is something that a lot of us can resonate with, coming, through what we've all experienced in the last few years. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and is there like I would want to say, is there a BPM that you create? I know this is probably like a funny question. I know like for me, I'm like I usually create like I'm noticing when my productions I create like with like 128 BPM. But is there one that you actually like create like with like a BPM that you have?
Yeah. Funny enough, my music seems to sit around 110. Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
it's a little bit slower than most
Yeah.
house music, and it's a little bit more trudgy. Like, I think it comes from my background in like rock music. It has this sort of, you know, swing to it when you slow it down a little bit. So about 110 BPM for the type of music I do.
Oh,
Sometimes a little bit
definitely.
slower, sometimes a little faster, but around there. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So can you
Good
share
question.
more? Yeah. Can you share your social media handles and website so others can, find out more about you and about Cavedweller?
Yeah. So the easiest way to find those details is to go to my Instagram, so Cavedweller AUS, and hit the link in my bio, because that'll link you to my YouTube, Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, everything. So that's the easiest way to find my links. Um, and I think you can still hit that link even if you're not actually, if you don't have an account on Instagram. So if you just find my profile, click the link, and that'll take you to all my socials, which
Awesome.
is pretty handy.
Thanks for sharing more about you. And yeah, and I'm hope you guys can find out more about Cave Dweller and his music. Make sure you um, take listen to his single next week when it comes out. Check it out. It'll be coming out next week. Follow his IG and Instagram. I appreciate every one of you guys joining in, inspiring you towards becoming the best, and musician and electronic artist. And hope you guys can join in as well next time. Is there anything else too that you'd like to share?
Yeah, follow C Brilliant Star. Okay, so everyone listening, if you haven't followed her, do so, because really, she's got her page is sort of a front page of EDM news. I don't even go to the news sites anymore. I just check out her Instagram account, and that's how I get updated on everything. So check that out. Okay, follow her as well. Yeah. Mm,
Thanks. Thanks for
no
promoting
worries.
that. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I pull out so much content. Yeah, so definitely thanks for joining in, everyone. I'm glad that you guys can be a part of this community and join in on this IG Live. And I know that I've started with this community since March of this year, April, and it's developed into something where it's just. I hope that it becomes bigger than what we can think, right? What we can expect, and be more of a bigger community that we can all meet together and maybe even co-write and have like a Discord community where we can actually have audio chats and have maybe in-person conferences in the near future as funds allow. So yeah, it'll be amazing. It'll be awesome. We can host something in person in the near future, or some event by the beach. You know, someplace where we don't have to like pay so much money to meet together and just share about your journey, about your life, about music. So yeah, so thanks for joining in and being part of my Instagram community, Cerebral and Star. Make sure to follow up for more inspirations every week and content. And if you want to get interviewed at your next on the IG Live, please let me know, and we'll probably definitely troubleshoot with technical things beforehand too. So thanks, Cavedweller, for joining in, and thanks for having you on my IG. It was awesome.
Thanks for having